Part 17. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 161. Suwan's whole body froze, her heart beating like thunder, as if it was about to jump out of her throat. When she didn't realize her feelings, Suwan didn't feel shy because Gu Huizi was intimate with her. Now that he knew that his thoughts towards him were not pure, Gu Huizi couldn't help but feel shy even if he did nothing but sat next to her. The two have been married for half a year. Apart from the first time they slept together and she bit his lip, his current embrace was the most intimate gesture they had. Suwan found that she didn't resist at all, and was even very greedy, unwilling to push him away. Gu Huizi. Suwan called out softly and tugged on his clothes with her fingers. Gu Huizi didn't move at all, breathing evenly. Suwan pushed his arm. Gu Huizi? Huizi? Gu Huizi seemed to be very tired, he just moved a little but did not let go of her. Suwan couldn't help but raise her eyebrows, sleeping so deeply? It seemed that he was really tired from traveling during this period. The evil heart couldn't help but grow stronger. Suwan was not the kind of person who treated her badly. Anyway, it was Gu Huizi who took the initiative to hug her, not her to take advantage of him. She leaned against Gu Huizi's chest with peace of mind, found a suitable position, and closed her eyes to sleep comfortably. The person in his arms fell into a deep sleep. Gu Huizi slowly opened his eyes, lowered his eyes and stared at her peaceful sleeping face. He didn't know what he thought of, and raised a very faint smile at the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand to brush the hair away from her cheek, and laid his face against her forehead to sleep. Suwan did not reject his embrace, but she should accept him in her heart. A dreamless night. When Suwan woke up, it was dawn and the man next to her had already gotten up. She sat up and stretched, feeling full of energy. Dressed neatly, Suwan came out of the house and went straight to the main room. Gu's mother, Gu Beizu, Gu Jingyun, Gu Huizi, and Jug were sitting in front of the 8 immortals table. The bowls and chopsticks were placed on the table, but no food was served yet. Sister-in-law, you're up, Gu Beizu smiled brightly, pointing to the empty seat between her and Gu Huizi, and said excitedly, today's breakfast was cooked by my eldest brother. I haven't had breakfast made by my eldest brother for a long time. Gu's mother said to Mrs. Hu, now serve the food. Mrs. Hu went to the kitchen to serve breakfast. You don't have to wait for me, you can eat first. I got up late, so you can wake me up instead of waiting for me. Suwan was a little embarrassed and asked everyone to wait for her with hungry stomachs. Luo sat elegantly next to Gu Huizi. Thinking of the hug last night, her voice softened and her eyes were full of tenderness. Let's find a dentist and buy 2 cooks to cook. Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun were secretly having fun. The eldest brother made breakfast for the eldest sister-in-law. The eldest sister-in-law felt sorry for her eldest brother and wanted to buy a cook to cook. This was great. The eyes of the 2 little guys involuntarily fell on Suwan's belly. Mother forbids them to wake up their sister-in-law so that they can take good care of themselves and give birth to their little nephew. Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun said eagerly, sister-in-law, please eat more and have a little nephew. Ahem. Suwan was drinking water and was so frightened by these shocking words that she choked. Her face was red, and she fooled the 2 little guys, you can't give birth to a nephew even if you eat too much, so you have to go to the temple to ask Guanyin Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva will only give you a nephew if you think it's fate. Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu seemed to understand, but remained enthusiastic and smiled with crooked eyebrows. Sister-in-law, Sister Jug said that you and her will go to Zhimiao temple today. When we come back, we will stop by the temple to pray for Guanyin Buddha. Suwan. She nudged Gu Huizi with her elbow, can you say something? With a smile on his lips, Gu Huizi said elegantly, it is most effective to ask for the Bodhisattva on his birthday. When is the Bodhisattva born? February 19th. Gu Beizhu picked her fingers and calculated how long it would be until February 19th. Gu Jingyun looked disappointed. We have to wait for several months. Then he became happy again. It was spring for my eldest brother at that time. When he finishes the exam, the Bodhisattva will give it to his sister-in-law and nephew, and it will be a double happiness. Suwon looked confused, as if she didn't know what weird words you were talking about. But he couldn't help but wonder in his heart, what did Gu Huizi mean? On the Bodhisattva's birthday, the two little guys really went to pray to the Bodhisattva. Is it possible for him to give her a child? With this thought, Suwon's thoughts drifted away, and she couldn't help but think of Gu Huizi's hug last night. Could it be that he had some impure thoughts towards her? The smile on Gu's mother's face never fell. The house should be so lively. I can't help but look forward to it. It will definitely be more festive if we have another child. At this time, Mrs. brought breakfast over, and everyone ate breakfast quietly. Suwon ate half a bowl of noodles, felt her full belly, and told Gu Huizi, "Don't send us to Ximiaogwan, Chi Lu will protect me. You need to settle your second brother and third sister first." Gu Huizi nodded slightly, "Okay, let Mon follow you." Suwon did not refuse Gu Huizi's arrangement and took Juji, Chi Lu and Mon to Ximiao Temple. Juji had been looking forward to meeting Juyu for a long time. He had no appetite for breakfast and only ate 2 dumplings. He sat in the carriage and stared at the green cloth curtain in a daze. Her voice was a little ethereal, mixed with a hint of uneasiness. "Sister Suwon, my biggest wish in this life is to see my brother. Now that I really want to get my wish, I don't dare anymore." Jug lowered his eyes and stared at his hands on his knees. Even though Suwon gave her skincare cream and her skin improved a little, her skin was still rough and her knuckles were thick. It was covered with deep and shallow scars. She retracted her fingers into her sleeves. "If my brother sees this, will he feel sad and blame himself? I blame him for not protecting me." Suwon held her hand and said in a soft voice, "Compared with these, seeing you is more important. Otherwise, he will spend his whole life in guilt and regret." "Is that so?" Jug's clear eyes were filled with mist, and he leaned fragilely on Suwon's shoulder. His soft voice was full of gratitude. "Sister Suwon, if it weren't for you, I will starve to death, and I will never see my brother again in this life." Suwon didn't speak. What Juji wanted was not to be comforted, but to talk. Suddenly I remembered the identities of Juji and Juyu. If her mother was really the queen of Ziliang, did their mother die in the struggle for the right to inherit the throne? There is a blood feud between the two families. But when Jug talked about his aunt, his eyes only had admiration, not hatred. The carriage stopped at the foot of the hill. Suwon gathered her thoughts and climbed to Ximiao Temple with Jug. The viewing door opened, and 9 desires came out. The moment Jug saw Juyu, tears rolled down his face, and all the worries in his heart were thrown away. She rushed over, threw herself into Juyu's arms, hugged him tightly, and said with choked sobs, "Brother, I finally found you." The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 162. Juyu wore a blue Taoist robe, filled with the elegant scent of sandalwood. Juji bumped into his arms, and while holding Juyu, she realized that his body was so thin that he seemed to have only a skeleton. Her nose became even more sore, tears started to fall, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. "Brother, it's all my fault. Geer shouldn't have disobeyed you, so I lost you. I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Juyu's hands froze at his sides, and Jug's guilty confession was heard in his ears. His hot tears wetted the thin shirt on his chest. His eyelashes trembled slightly, as if the wind had blown fine sand into them, and his eyes ached. Hot tears overflowed uncontrollably. He lowered his head and raised his arms to hug the thin girl in his arms. restraining himself from using too much force for fear of crushing her fragile body. Regret and guilt, joy and excitement, these emotions collide, intertwine, and tear apart. Geer, it's my brother's fault that I didn't protect you. Juyu's love was like a treasure, and he gently patted Ju with a sob in his throat. Thank you very much for coming to my side again. This time, brother, again I won't lose you either. Jug grasped Juyu's clothes tightly with both hands and cried in his arms. Suwon stood aside, watching the brothers and sisters crying with joy at their reunion, and a slight smile couldn't help but appear on her lips. Suwon wanted to find Ju before, but Suwon had selfish motives. She didn't want to be an enemy of Juyu and wanted to pull him into her camp. Now that I see this heartwarming scene, all selfishness has disappeared. I just feel that it is so good. All the separated relatives are reunited and reunited. This is the most beautiful picture. Suwon glanced at the tourists who were watching curiously, and reminded, do you want to find a place to talk? Juyu looked at Suwon with red eyes, and then at Ju who was still sobbing. Let's go into the dormitory to reminisce about the past. Ju held Juyu's hand and refused to take a step forward. He held Suwon's hand with the other hand and walked into the temple. Juyu glanced at Suwon and naturally saw Ju's dependence on Suwon. He guessed in his mind where Suwon found Ju. Before he could come up with a clue, Ju had stopped crying and calmed down from his excitement. Thinking of how he had lost his composure just now, 2 blushes appeared on his cheeks and he said sheepishly, brother, it's Suwon, my sister saved me. If it weren't for her, we, brother and sister, would never see each other again in this life. Juyu paused. Oh, he asked curiously, how did you meet? When I escaped, I fainted from hunger on the road. Sister Suwon happened to be returning from the capital and saw me passed out on the road. She revived me, gave me some food, and asked me where I wanted to go. She could give me a ride. I have experienced the pain of trusting others easily, and I was very wary of Sister Suwon, fearing that she would be unkind and lying to her would go in the opposite direction, which would not be easy. Sister Suwon did not force me. She gave me 2 taels of silver and left a pair of shoes. Take people away. I didn't dare to eat her food. When I was throwing it away, I saw a pair of bracelets dropped on the ground. It was my brother's bracelet. I think my brother must have trusted Sister Suwon before giving her the bracelets. Jug said in shame, my straw sandals were worn out and there were blood blisters on the soles of my feet. Because Sister Suwon might be my brother's friend, I accepted her favor, put on Sister Suwon's shoes, ate food, and chased after her. She goes. When Suwon heard this, she felt speechless. Ju is alone. He is afraid that on the way to escape, if his true face is revealed, he will meet someone with evil intentions. Her face is dirty, and she can't see clearly what she looks like. She is so thin. The cheekbones are protruding and the eye sockets are sunken. How can I tell that you two are similar? It makes her suffer a little. Sister Suwon, if you put the bracelet on your wrist, I will recognize it and follow you. Jug saw his brother, showing off his girlish charm. Hearing this, Juyu turned his head and looked at Suwon. Suwon looked helpless. I wore it on my hand before. I was thinking that you would recognize it and take the initiative to identify me. But this bracelet belongs to your brother. I have a husband-in-law, so I put another man's bracelet on it. It's illegal to wear it on your wrist. Jug thought of Gu Huizi, pursed his lips and smiled quietly. If you hadn't been kind-hearted and gave Geer money, we wouldn't have formed such a fate. Thank you for bringing Geer back. You will be my benefactor in the future. Juyu smiled a little more sincerely and invited Suwon in. In the dormitory, I carried a teapot, scooped out snow water from the jar, took out the tea leaves, put them into the teapot, and put them on the stove to boil. Brother, let me help you. Jug picked up the fan and turned the fire in the stove bigger. Juyu suddenly held her hand. It turned out to be chubby, white, and tender, like a snow dumpling. The palm was covered with thick calluses, the knuckles were thick and covered with criss-crossing scars, and he suddenly pushed her sleeves away. Going up there, no part of the arm was intact, which shows how much hardship he has endured over the years. His heart seemed to be held tightly by an invisible hand, causing pain like it was being torn apart. Ju-ji subconsciously shrank into his sleeves as if he was frightened. Looking at Ju-yu's tense face with wet eyes, his eyes were so dark that no light could penetrate. She said uneasily, "Brother, I will take good care of my hands. Sister Suwon specially developed an ointment for me, which can remove scars and make them whiter and tenderer soon." Ju-yu felt like he had been punched, his throat rolled, and he wanted to say something, but his throat was blocked by a ball of cotton wool, making him unable to make a sound. "Brother." Jug looked at Ju-yu's red eyes and called him timidly, "I will have you in the future, and everything in the past is in the past." Ju-yu closed his eyes tightly. He didn't know how much effort it took to restrain the rage in his body. "No, my brother will never let you suffer again." Ju-yu touched Ju-ji's head lovingly. Jug's smile is clean, trusting and dependent. Ju-yu lets go of Ju-ji's hand. Ju-ji pulled down his sleeves, sat next to Suwon, held her arm clingingly, and whispered into her ear, his eyebrows curved, looking innocent and carefree. Ju-yu was very sad, but also very happy. No matter what hardships she endured, she was still the same when she came back. The tea on the stove is boiling, and the clear and faint fragrance of tea floats out with the mist. Ju-yu took out a bowl, poured tea into the bowl, and placed it in front of Suwon. The tea soup was light green in color, and the aroma of the tea was very refreshing. Suwon took a deep sniff and felt that her heavy brain was much clearer. She couldn't help but take a sip. The entrance was slightly bitter, but also a hint of sweetness appeared on her lips and teeth. The room is filled with the elegant fragrance of tea. Suwon liked the taste very much. She drank a bowl of tea in small sips. The hot tea seemed to rush to her limbs. Her whole body was warm, and all her fatigue was dissipated. It was very light. "What kind of tea is this?" "It's delicious." Suwon stretched out her arms and her eyes were bright. "I feel that after drinking a bowl of tea, my back pain has been relieved. I don't know if it's because I'm tired during this period or something else. I always felt tired and weak, but now I feel particularly energetic." Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan-meng Baobao. Chapter 163. When Ju-ji heard such good tea, he looked at Ju-yu with dazzling eyes and said softly, "Brother, I want to drink it too. You haven't recovered yet. This tea is cold, so you can't drink it? When you recover, my brother will cook it for you." Ju-yu saw her pursed lips, her brows gentle, and pinched her cheeks. "Be obedient." Jug lowered his eyelashes and drank a bowl of cold water. "This is snow mist tea. The peak is shrouded in clouds and mist all year round. There are several wild tea trees growing there. In winter, when there is a layer of snow, you can pick them. The snow water on the tea leaves is put into a clean jar and used to make the snow mist tea." Julia put away the tea bowl in front of Suwon. Suwon raised her eyebrows and said, "So elegant. There are only 1 or 2 taels of tea a year. I don't have much here. I'll leave the tea for you this winter." Julia washed the bowl and sat across from Suwon. "Mrsku, can you return the bracelet to me? I'll give it to you again. I'll give you something." He took out a sachet from his sleeve and placed it in front of Suwon. This is a herbal pack for refreshing your mind and relieving fatigue. If you wear it for a few days, you will no longer feel tired or weak. Suwon stared at a sachet made of grey cloth embroidered with white cranes on the table. The faint herbal fragrance hit her nostrils and smelled very good. Something flashed quickly in her eyes, and she took out the bracelet from her sleeve pocket and placed it in front of Juyu. Kongshan Ruliu said, "This bracelet was given to you brothers and sisters by your mother. I can't take advantage of it." Suwon picked up the sachet, opened it, and took a closer look at the herbal bag inside. It was indeed as effective as Juyu said, and there were no other harmful substances. She hung it around her waist. Jug saw that her brother and sister Suwon had a good relationship. She was very happy. She couldn't help but think that it would be better if sister Suwon had not gotten married. Being her sister-in-law would be even more perfect. "Brother, are you returning to secular life?" Jug hopes that his brother can have his own happiness, instead of living a miserable life in a Taoist temple. "We'll talk about it then." Juyu didn't give a definite answer. Jug stopped asking questions, knowing that his brother had his own reasons. "How do you arrange Juji?" Suwon asked. "She stays in the Taoist temple." Juyu stood up and bowed to Suwon. "During this time, Geer has troubled you to take care of her." "I like Juji very much." "You're welcome." Suwon stood up and said, "I will retire after my work is done, and I won't disturb you two brothers and sisters from talking about themselves." The brother and sister sent Suwon out of the Taoist temple. Suwon went down the mountain and got into the carriage. She opened her hand, and there were 2 tea leaves in her palm, which was the bowl of tea she drank. She looked at it for a long time and didn't notice anything wrong. Suwon took off the sachet from her waist, poured out the herbs inside, and fell into deep thought. Juyu would not give her a sachet for no reason, and specially made suo tea for her to drink. This kind of snow mist tea is not a simple tea, but rather a kind of medicine that is good for the body. Otherwise, why did he not refill the cup for her when she clearly had a pot of tea, but instead took the bowl away after she expressed her attitude? Juji's body was clearly in good health. Just a cup of tea would not have any impact, but he refused. Suwon guessed that the crux was the bracelet. She discovered Juyu's secret of poisoning the emperor, so Juyu gave her a bracelet and then quietly introduced her to the poison, inducing the poison and getting rid of her. She found Jug and sent him back. Juyu gave her a bowl of snow mist tea to solve the problem left by the bracelet. Otherwise, how could there be any reason to take back the things that were given away? Suwon sighed. Juyu was a master of poison, and he knew she was a healer, so the things he gave her left no trace at all, making them hard to detect. If she didn't want to win over him, Suwon wouldn't accept his bracelet. She thought of something, raised the corners of her mouth, and put the remaining tea into the sachet. Juyu stood at the door of the Taoist temple, watching Suwon leave. He asked the Taoist boy to go to the temple to spread a word, then took Juji back to the dormitory, raised his hand to close the door, and stared at his black nails. He remembered that the only thing Suwon had brief contact with was the tea bowl. Not only was Juyu not annoyed, but there was a faint smile in his eyes. She was warning him. He sighed slightly. Suwon was too responsive, and she would figure out any of his moves. Even if she didn't give her a cup of snow mist tea today, Suwon didn't notice the problem with the bracelet for the time being. She would notice it when she saw the medicine lead, right? Juyu thought that this cup of snow mist tea would not save Suwon, but save himself. If he wanted to poison Suwon, he had to use something mutually reinforcing. Suwon poisoned him, but even though he was alert, he still managed to kill him easily. "Brother, what's wrong with your hand?" Jug screamed. Within a moment, Juyu's hand was completely black and painful as if it were pricked by needles. "It's okay, brother will figure it out." Juyu forced himself to hold back and did not reveal anything wrong. He placed Juji properly. He entered the pharmacy and began to diagnose that Suwon had poisoned him. 2 hours passed, and the pain in Juyu's hand became more severe with each wave. Cold sweat dripped on his forehead. He put the refined pill in his mouth and swallowed it. Bang! Juyu fell to the ground, his stomach cramped and his face turned pale. Brother! Brother! What's wrong with you? Jug pushed the door open and saw Juyu sweating profusely. He was about to cry, "Are you feeling unwell? Sister Suwon is very powerful. I asked her to treat you." Juyu gave a bitter smile. There is no distinction between medicine and poison. Suwon has superb medical skills and is also first-rate in using poisons. Based on the symptoms, he thought it was Swanyun poison and followed the formula of Swanyun poison to detoxify it, but the poison was aggravated. Juyu felt fishy and sweet in his throat. He swallowed it, fearing that it would frighten Juji. "I'm fine." Juyu supported Juji to stand up and pushed Juji's hand away. "I'm going down the mountain." "Elder brother, don't follow me." "Nothing will happen to me." Juyu told the Taoist boy to look at Juji. He slowly walked towards the door, preparing to go down the mountain to find Suwon and sincerely apologize to her. As soon as he walked out of the Taoist temple, he saw Qilu standing at the door. The eldest lady gave it to you. Qilu threw the medicine bottle in his hand to him. Juyu held the medicine bottle and pursed her thin lips. After a while, he whispered, "You can apologize to Mrsku for me. You will definitely come to apologize in person one day." Qilu glanced at Juyu's blackened hands and said, "The eldest lady said that you should be calmer, which is her reward." After leaving these words, he hurried down the mountain to meet Suwon. "Miss, I gave him the medicine," Qilu reported. Suwon said yeah, her voice hoarse as if she had woken up from sleep. "Let's go back home." Qilu got on the shaft of the carriage and drove the carriage. Suwon threw the sachet wrapped around her fingertips out of the carriage window and fell to the ground. After a while, a group of people walked out of the green shade of the mountains. Siewei stopped, picked up the sachet on the ground, saw the white crane embroidered on it, and thought of the words coming from Himiao Temple. The person who cracked the chess game was a 15 or 16-year-old girl, wearing a gray sachet embroidered with white cranes around her waist. He ordered the followers behind him, "Go and find out who left the mountain just now." The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 164. Siewei never gave up looking for someone to crack the chess game. Unfortunately, there is no news. He returned to the temple again and made an agreement with the eldest princess to return home every 10th day of every month to spend one day with her. Today I had morning classes with Abbot Huiming. After finishing morning classes and preparing to go down the mountain, I heard news from Himiao Temple. The person who cracked the chess game in the first place went to Himiao Temple and was seen by Taoist Master Juyu. Siewei was suspicious and sent his entourage to Himiaogwan to inquire about Juyu. Tao Tong stopped them and told them that Juyu was preparing medicinal materials in the pharmacy and no one was allowed to disturb them during this period. Siewei was worried that the eldest princess would think too much about it, so he took the people down the mountain first. There are some clues on the left and right. I will come to the Taoist temple tomorrow to ask Juyu for questioning. I didn't expect to pick up the sachet at the foot of the mountain. There had been no movement at all in Himiao Temple before, but this news suddenly came out, probably because the right person who solved the problem came to the Taoist temple again. Siewei lowered his eyes and stared at the sachet in his hand, which exuded a faint herbal fragrance and a vague sandalwood scent. A girl of 15 or 16 years old. He couldn't help but think of Su Mingxiu taking credit for his previous work. He didn't have much hope for the girl Juyu mentioned, just because he was afraid of another misunderstanding. Siewei stepped on the carriage and returned to the eldest princess mansion. The eldest princess had been looking forward to it for a long time. After hearing the announcement from the maid, she stood at the door of the front hall and saw Siewei strolling over. A kind smile appeared on her face. Yeah, are things delayed today? Mother thought you wouldn't be here today. Came back. Today there is news about the person who solved the problem. It was delayed for a while. Siewei handed the sachet in his hand to the eldest princess. Mother, do you know this sachet? The eldest princess took it, carefully identified it, shook her head and said, I don't know. Did the owner of the sachet solve the problem? Siewei said lightly, yes, she is a girl of 15 or 16 years old. The eldest princess frowned, thinking of some unpleasant things. At this time, the entourage came back and reported, Your Highness, young master, my subordinates have inquired about the person who went to Ximiaogwan today, and only Miss Su is the most suitable. The person she went to see today was Taoist Master Juyu, who is exactly 16 years old. Miss Su? Which Miss Su? The eldest princess couldn't help but her eyebrows jumped when she heard the surname. Suwan. Wan, the eldest princess asked in surprise, did she solve the chess game? It's her, the entourage explained. My subordinates thought they were mistaken before, and specifically asked the Taoist boy guarding the door. Today, Taoist Master Juyu has only seen Miss Su and another girl she brought. It is said that the girl is the long-lost sister of Taoist Master Juyu, and she has just returned to Beijing. The eldest princess said in shock, I didn't expect that this girl really cracked the chess game, and she didn't tell me. At first, she was worried about Siewei's refusal to go down the mountain. Suwan coaxed her sweetly and said, Aunt, please relax. Sooner or later, my cousin will come down from the mountain to fulfill your filial piety. He is doing what you like while you are young. Wan will work hard to learn chess. I hope that one day I can beat my cousin's chess game and reunite you and my son as soon as possible. Your love for me will not be in vain. After Suwan got engaged to the prince, the eldest princess asked her to call her aunt. Later I heard that Suwan hired a gentleman to learn chess after he returned, but his talent was not high and there was no movement after a while. Who knew that she would fulfill her promise and also hide her merit and fame? This girl is warm-hearted and bloody. She followed the Qi family instead of the Su family. Now Su Mingxiu refuses to accept her favor and has been relegated to the cold palace. Su Jihong treats this pheasant as a phoenix and treats the pheasant as a phoenix and breaks off any relationship with the children of his legitimate wife. The eldest princess looked disdainful. It's a blessing for Wan. Having a family like them that eats people and doesn't spit out their bones will be a drag on her sooner or later. Calculating it this way, Su Jihong did a good thing. The eldest princess heard about Suwan's deeds and her career was flourishing. Gu Huizi also won the title of Xie Yuan, and he will become an official in the future. The eldest princess's eyes were kind. Wan is my benefactor. From now on, those of us in the eldest princess's mansion should help her more. Siewei didn't say anything. He planned to meet Suwan tomorrow. If it is confirmed that she is the one who can solve the problem, she is a like-minded fellow Taoist, and Siewei will naturally take care of her. Yayoi, please send a message to the Gu family and I will visit them tomorrow. Siewei ordered his followers. Huh? It's still early today, so let's go now. The eldest princess wanted to tell her maid to prepare a generous gift, but Siewei stopped her. We go rashly. If Suwan has something of her own, why don't we give it to her, causing distress? The eldest princess thought about it and realized that this was the truth. She sighed, okay, let's go tomorrow. As Siewei guessed, Suwan did have her own things to do. She has been busy since she came to Beijing, and everything is well arranged. After returning from Ximiaogwan, she went to Dingyuanhou mansion to visit Mrs. Su. When the doorman saw that it was Suwan, he was frightened. He blocked the crack in the door and said, Miss, the Marquis said you are not allowed to enter the house. Really? Suwan blinked at him. The doorman was stunned and didn't understand what Suwan meant. Before he could recover, Suwon suddenly got angry and punched him. The moment his fist was about to touch his face, the servant fell to the ground with a cry. When the other servants saw this, they were frightened and ran away to complain. Suwon curled her lips and walked in boldly. He put his hands behind his back and gave a thumbs up to the doorman. The servant was lying on the ground, his hands and feet were weak. If he didn't react in time and the eldest lady couldn't hold back her fists, all the teeth in his mouth would be broken, right? Suwon went straight to Fuxi Hall, and no one dared to stop her. Because Suwon was really capable of beating people. Although Mr. Ho posted a notice to sever the relationship between father and daughter, the father and daughter had never met. Who knows how true or false Mr. Ho was? Arriving at Fuxi Hall without any obstruction, Xiao Tao saw her running over happily. "Miss, you are finally back." People in the room heard Xiao Tao's loud voice, and MRSU came out of the room on crutches. "Wan, you're back." MRSU's eyes were red. She touched Suwon, muttering, "I've lost weight," and said apologetically, "It's no use, Grandma, let him break up with you. Relationship, it's a joke for everyone. Grandma, don't blame yourself. I'm fine. He broke off relations with me, which is exactly what I want. You don't have to worry about him forcing me to use filial piety in the future." Suwon helped MRSU into the house and helped MRSU sit down. Took her pulse, made sure her body was recovering well, and said with a relaxed expression, "Are you okay during this period?" MRSU observed Suwon and made sure that she was not sad about this incident, and she felt a little calmer. "I'm fine. Grandma will go to the monastery to practice cultivation in a few days. From now on, she won't come to the Marquis mansion." The old grandma quickly took out a wooden box and placed it on the small table. MRSU held the box and put it in Suwon's hand. "You have to hide the things in here." The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 165. Suwon refused. "Grandma, I can't have it." "Grandma, you only have one grandson. If I don't give it to you, who will I give it to?" Old Madame Su sneered. "I might as well throw them all into the river to make a noise." "Grandma, you are in good health. Please keep these things safe." Suwon knew what the box in her hand contained. It was probably MRSU's dowry. She said in a low voice, "My granddaughter is not sensible. She made you angry before and did not fulfill her filial duty under your knee. Grandma is a good person, why should you serve her? Now that you are married, you should run your own small family well. Grandma is still strong and has people to take care of her. You, just come and see me occasionally." MRSU's eyes were filled with affection. "I'm old and can't take care of it anymore." Suwon's nose suddenly became sore, and she leaned into MRSU's arms. "Grandma, you will live a long life, and I will visit you often. Grandma won't keep you today. People in Wei Rui Pavilion will know later that coming here to make a fuss is too disturbing." MRSU hugged Suwon with a peaceful face and gently touched her head. She seemed to have no regrets. "I'll leave Xiao Tao to you. If anything happens, tell Xiao Tao and she will send me the news. I'm not afraid of her." Suwon also wanted to have dinner with the old lady. But MRSU didn't want her to get into trouble. Grandma is old and can't hear the noise. Her ears are not clean, so she gets very flustered. Suwon took a step back. "When Grandma went to the nunnery, she sent someone to deliver a letter to me. I will take you there." "Okay." MRSU agreed and told the old nanny, "Send the person out personally." The old mama asked Xiao Tao to carry the baggage and said respectfully, "Miss, you come with me." Suwon followed the old woman outside. The maid at the door opened the curtain, and she suddenly looked back. MRSU stood beside the couch, leaning on a cane with both hands, her back stooped, and the white sunlight shone on her frost-white hair, revealing the loneliness that had gone through vicissitudes of life. Feeling sour and bitter in her heart, Suwon wanted to take Mrsu away. Grandma. Suwon was about to step back. Mrsu waved her hand, let's go quickly. Suwon stopped and followed the old woman out of the side door. The old nanny watched Suwon get into the carriage and return to Fuxi Hall, where she met Kinglin face to face at the entrance of the courtyard. Kinglin hurried over, her hair a little messy. When she saw the old grandma alone, she entered the house with a sullen face. Looking around, Suwon was nowhere to be seen, and his face turned green, knowing that Suwon, that bitch, was gone. Old madam, you are old. You should distinguish between the inside and the outside. Who is the real blood of the Su family? You are the old madam of the Su family. Everything you have belongs to the Su family. If it is taken away by an outsider, the Marquis, and I will get the things back at any cost. Kinglin looked at Mrsu with hatred, her eyes seemed to be quenched with poison. From the time Mrsu asked the regent to take back her hereditary and irreplaceable title, Kinglin wanted to kill the old pious woman. Mrsu closed her eyes and ignored Kinglin's words. Kinglin's teeth were almost broken, don't pretend to be confused. I will tell the Marquis about today's matter. She did not stay to humiliate herself, and left with her people in a mighty manner, telling Xiaojuan to investigate. Did Suwon take away any property from Mrsu? Suwon caused her daughter to fall out of favor and become a useless person, making the entire Dingyuan Marquis mansion a laughing stock. She has not yet settled this debt. The old mama watched Kinglin leave angrily, closed the door, walked to Mrsu and said, "Old lady, you give all your things to the eldest lady, because you are afraid of causing trouble for her." Wan can hold on. Mrsu opened her cloudy eyes, which were lifeless. The thing I regret most in my life is that I was so soft to Kinglin and agreed to the Queen Mother's proposal to marry Min Min from the Chi family. The Dingyuan Marquis mansion is not a hereditary one, but an ordinary hereditary system. In Sujihong's generation, he will be reduced from a second-class marquis to a third-class earl. Sujihong was not outstanding. When she was looking at her daughter-in-law, the Queen Mother came to her and asked Sujihong to marry Chi Min, thereby making the title of Dingyuan Marquis mansion hereditary. Mrsu is a sensible person. She has heard about the affairs between Chi Min and the regent. The Queen Mother came forward to make such a request, which shows that the royal family will not marry a daughter of the Chi family. If the Su family did not marry, the Queen Mother would find another candidate. After careful consideration, Mrsu agreed. I approached General Chi privately and promised him that he would take good care of Chi Min. But what did Sujihong do? He found a slave to defile Chi Min. Mrsu owed Chi Min. No matter whose child Suwon was, she was still her granddaughter. I owe them, the Su family owes them. Mrsu seemed to be much older. The old mama sighed in her heart. The old lady could not overcome the hurdle in her heart. She always thought that it was her selfishness that had harmed Chi Min for the rest of his life. You have to let yourself go. Miss, I hope you have a good life. Mrsu thought of Suwon and smiled softly. Suwon sat on the carriage and opened the wooden box. Inside was a land deed, a key and a letter. This house was bought by Madame Su many years ago. The dowry had already been moved into this house and was all given to her. Suwon sniffed and felt that she had been a happy person her whole life. In my previous life, I had no parents, but my grandfather and grandpa loved me. She has no parents in this life, but there are too many people who have great kindness towards her and treat her with all their heart. Suwon raised her hand to wipe her sore and swollen eyes. Miss, Xiao Tao got into the carriage with her baggage on her shoulders. Seeing Suwon's eyes were red, she said at a loss, "What's wrong with you? Did something happen?" Suwon buried her face in her arms and rubbed it. "I can't bear to leave my grandmother." Xiao Tao hesitated, but didn't say anything. "Are they trying to embarrass grandma?" Suwon asked. They don't dare to bully the old lady. Xiao Tao told Suwan something happy. The stepwife wanted to have a son to inherit the title, and she had been looking for Master Wyron for medical advice. The old lady went to the regent, requesting him to take back the hereditary title. After the death of the Marquis, the Dingyuan Marquis mansion will no longer exist. Suwan was not happy, but instead became more and more sad. The old lady has spent her whole life working for the Marquis mansion. If she wasn't too hopeless, how could she let anyone take back her title? I'm afraid she feels worse than anyone else. Go to Zhang Mansion. Suwan knocked on the wall of the car. The carriage drove towards Zhang Mansion. Xiao Tao was confused. Miss, do you know Mr. Zhang, the former chief assistant? We know him. Suwan closed the box and put it in the car wall cabinet. Huizi is Mr. Jiang's student. He brought his second brother and third sister to visit today. Xiao Tao's eyes widened in surprise, and then she expressed admiration. My uncle is so amazing. But then again, he's not great, and he's not worthy of you. Suwan ate her rainbow fart. The carriage suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Suwan opened the curtain and asked, looking at the restaurant not far away. Gu Huizi stood at the door. Opposite him was Cao Suxue. The author has something to say. Suwan, durian, keyboard, CPU, broken tiles, washboard, you can pick one at will. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 166. Gu Huizi took Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu to visit Zhang Mansion. The housekeeper told him that the teacher would go to the Imperial College early this morning and would not be able to return home until evening. Gu Huizi said goodbye to the housekeeper and planned to visit again tomorrow. He brought Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu to the bookstore. The two little guys read books all morning and bought some books, pens, inks, paper and inkstones. Gu Huizi thought that Suwan would not come back for lunch, so he planned to take them to a restaurant for dinner. Return home. Unexpectedly, after lunch, I met Cao Suxue at the door of the restaurant. Mr. Gu, is it really you? I thought I had mistakenly admitted the person. When did you come to the capital? Cao Suxue was 3 steps away from Gu Huizi. She knew her sense of proportion very well, and her clear voice conveyed the feeling of having met an old friend for a long time. Excited, Dad will return to Beijing soon to report on his work, and the whole family will move back. My 7th brother will be very happy to know that you are in Beijing. After you leave, he will always miss you. Gu Huizi said coldly, congratulations, Your Majesty. Then he took Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun to the carriage. Are these two your brothers and sisters? Cao Suxue didn't seem to notice Gu Huizi's indifference. The smile on her face remained unchanged. She looked at Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun tenderly, and gave them the rabbit-shaped snacks in her hands. This the dim sum is delicious, try it. Gu Beizu leaned her hands behind her back. Big brother said, don't ask for things from strangers. Gu Jingyun continued the second half of the sentence, especially the people who rush to give us things must have evil intentions. They see us looking cute and want to kidnap and sell them for money. The two little guys raised their heads and asked Gu Huizi in unison, brother, are we right? Gu Huizi touched the two people's heads and said, that's right. Cao Suxue's hands froze in mid-air, and she could barely maintain the smile on her face. Second Miss Cao, if you have nothing else to do, don't bother us. Gu Huizi was cold and distant, and did not show mercy. You and I have no friendship, so there is no need to go out to say hello. We must take into account the safety of men and women, so as not to offend them. Gossip hinders reputation. Cao Suxue said quickly, Mr. Gu, I am not afraid, and others will not misunderstand you. You and my father are good friends, and it is reasonable for me to say hello to you. Hindering my reputation, Gu Huizi said very calmly and shamelessly, I am henpecked. If my wife misunderstands that I am not a husband, you cannot bear it. Cao Sugzio looked at Gu Huizi in shock, as if she didn't expect that a man like him would say such shameless words. She wanted to say something else, but suddenly she noticed an unfriendly gaze. Cao Sugzio looked towards that gaze and saw Suwon in the carriage. She recognized at a glance that she was the woman who rescued Cao Wangking in Guangling Mansion. This woman came from a poor family, and because of her influence, she hugged Zhao Wei's lap, and now she has climbed to the capital. Cao Sugzio maintained her status as superior to others in front of Suwon, and was very dismissive of women who traded their bodies for glory and wealth. She stopped pestering Gu Huizi to avoid making Suwon laugh. Unexpectedly, Suwon got off the carriage and walked towards her. Cao Sugzio didn't look good, but she had to calm down and show a dignified smile. After all, no matter how much she despised Suwon, she couldn't change the fact that Suwon was Cao Wangking's lifesaver. Ms. Su, I didn't expect to see you here after being separated from Fukin. What a coincidence. Cao Sugzio sounded friendly, but her attitude was very distant. She said politely, Sister has always missed you. If I knew you were in the capital, I would definitely miss you. I'm very happy. I'll invite you to visit Cao Mansion another day. Suwon gave her a cold look, ignored her, and turned to look at Gu Huizi. Gu Huizi had a bad premonition and called out warmly, Madam. Sister-in-law, Gu Beizu ran over and complained, when we came out after dinner, we met this sister. She gave us snacks, but the eldest brother didn't allow us to ask for them. Sister-in-law, I testify that the eldest brother has maintained his innocence. Gu Jingyun patted his chest and stared at Suwon nervously, fearing that she would misunderstand that his eldest brother was related to this woman. Even though they are young, they understand everything they need to understand. You can tell at a glance that this woman has no good intentions. All she had to do was pluck out her eyeballs and stick them to their eldest brother, hoping to become their sister-in-law. Cao Sugzio was shocked and stared, Are you Suwon? She couldn't help but look at Suwon's clothes again. She didn't look like a lady from a well-known family, and she looked poor. Oh yes. Marquis Dingyuan severed the father-daughter relationship with Suwon, and Suwon lost his backer. No wonder he couldn't afford to wear silk and satin. Moreover, she was very unruly and was not clear with Zhao Wei. She felt unjust for Gu Huizi. Cao Sugzio calmed down, smiled slightly, and said insinuatingly, I saw you and General Zhao getting close before. He was very protective of you and sent you to the hospital personally. I thought you two were a couple. Suwon raised her eyebrows and said nonchalantly, Really? General Zhao sent me to the hospital because there was something he didn't understand, so I couldn't ask more questions in front of you. After all, Miss Cao's bodyguard was poisoned by Mongolian perspiration. Miss Cao doesn't have any bodyguards. It's easy for people to misunderstand this kind of thing if she says it in front of the magistrate. Cao Sugzio's face changed drastically, as if her throat was being strangled, and she said with difficulty, I don't know what you are talking about. My guards did not get the Mongolian sweat medicine because it was their turn to be on duty and they were assassinated to escort me before they had time to have lunch. Escape. You don't need to explain to me, leave it to Miss Cao. Suwon's eyes were cold and she warned, Gu Huizi is my man. If you dare to provoke him again, don't blame me for being ruthless. Cao Sugzio's face turned green and red, and said with humiliation, You misunderstood. Mr. Gu is my seventh brother's husband. I met him just to reminisce about old times. That's the best. After all, I have a bad temper. Whoever dares to touch my things will not give up until a layer of their skin is torn off. Suwon curled her lips, pointed her finger on Cao Sugzio's face, and said the next stroke, Miss Cao is so beautiful, I don't think you want to try it. Cao Sugzio felt terrified. Suwon's nails scratched across her cheek, a chill shot up her spine, and she shivered. At that moment, she had a strong premonition that Suwon really wanted to tear off her skin. Her scalp tightened, she staggered back a step, and walked away quickly, as if running away. Suwon snorted coldly, took out the handkerchief and wiped the fingers that had touched Cao Sugzio, crumpled up the handkerchief and threw it into the trash can. Wan, I didn't say a few words to her. Gu Huizi took out a handkerchief and handed it to her. Suwon glanced at him sideways, took the hands of Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu, and walked towards the carriage. What do you want to eat? Let's go buy it. We're full. There's nothing we don't want to eat. Other families have it. Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu turned to look at Gu Huizi with sympathetic glances. Brother, please wish yourself well. We tried our best. Gu Huizi. He followed, and the carriage passed him and drove away. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 167. Gu Huizi's eyebrows beat a beat. Suwon was angry. This is nothing more than a disaster from heaven. Gu Huizi turned back to his carriage helplessly, caught up with Suwon's carriage, and followed leisurely. Master, we've caught up. Moun warned, and saw Gu Jingyun's head sticking out of the car window and looking towards him. He was quickly grabbed by the scruff of the neck. Ouch! Gu Jingyun fell to the floor without any pain from the fall. He straightened up like a carp and brushed against Suwon. Sister-in-law, brother is chasing me. Suwon didn't answer and scolded him sternly, don't stick your head out of the car window. If someone rides a fast horse or a carriage gallops past, your head will be divided. Sister-in-law, I know I was wrong. Gu Jingyun was thinking about his elder brother and said aggrievedly, the elder brother didn't pay attention to that woman because he was warning her not to ruin his innocence. Gu Beizu nodded at the side, yeah. My eldest brother also said that he is henpecked. She asked curiously, sister-in-law, what does henpecked mean? Gu Jingyun rushed to answer, stupid. This is because you are afraid of your wife. Suwon had a headache. Cao Sugzio and Gu Huizi had a blind date. Although it didn't work out, Cao Sugzio was still determined to be evil. Suwon felt particularly eye-catching when she saw the two of them standing together. She knew very well that Gu Huizi was innocent, so Cao Sugzio approached him. Since Mr. Cao always had to be polite, there seemed to be an unknown fire burning in her heart. She couldn't stay rational, couldn't help being angry, and didn't want to talk to him. Suwon took out a pot of water from the closet and took 2 sips before she could barely suppress the sour water in her heart. Sister-in-law, don't be angry. If you don't want to talk to eldest brother, we will ignore him today. Gu Beizu easily defected to Suwon's side and took out a small paper bag from her sleeve. She opened the paper bag and found a piece of paper inside. She stuffed some of the melted candy into Suwon's mouth and said softly, when I was young, my family was poor and it was difficult to eat candy. When I was injured or missed my father, my mother would take out a piece of candy and hit it with the back of a knife. Break it into pieces and give it to my second brother and me. She said that when she is unhappy, eating a little sugar will make her feel sweet and forget the unhappy things. Suwon held the candy in her mouth, and the sweet taste went straight to her heart. She hugged Gu Beizu and rested her head on her shoulder. When days are too bitter, even eating sweets can't hide the bitter taste, and the bitter taste will only multiply. This statement is just to explain yourself. Sister-in-law, are you in a good mood? Gu Beizu touched Suwon's head. Suwon smiled, okay, I just feel sorry for you. I'm afraid Gu Huizi's mood will be even worse. Obviously he has the ability to improve the conditions of his family and prevent his younger brothers and sisters from suffering, but due to Gu Jingyun's status, he does not dare to keep a high profile. If you are not careful, it will be a disaster. This candy is very sweet. Suwon raised her head and rubbed her fingers across Gu Beizu's forehead, where there was a scar from the original owner and a faint pink mark. During this period of time, Gu Beizu has grown flesh on her body and her skin is slowly turning white. Gu Beizu smiled happily and said, I still have a lot of candies. She put the rest in the car closet, her eyes shining. Sister-in-law, you can eat one if you want. Okay. Suwon was in a brighter mood. I rubbed my cheeks and felt that I was getting more alive, and I was actually being coaxed by a child. He was planning in his mind to develop an ointment to remove the scar on Gu Beizu's forehead. Except for greeting Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun at the beginning, Xiao Tao had been sitting in the corner. She was very happy to see the brother and sister getting close to Suwon. Gu Jingyun was lying on the window, paying attention to the movement of the carriage behind him, and suddenly realized that he was falling behind. His eyes widened, and he wanted to stick his head out to see what was going on. Remembering Suwon's instructions, he could only worry secretly, hoping that his eldest brother would go home as soon as possible to resolve the misunderstanding. While Gu Jingyun was praying, the carriage stopped at the door of Gu's house. Xiao Tao got off the carriage first and was about to move the wooden ladder. Suwon jumped out of the carriage and took Gu Beizu down. Gu Jingyun stood on the carriage shaft and looked towards the entrance of the long alley. He couldn't see his eldest brother's carriage. His heart felt cold. Could his eldest brother be angry too? He looked at Suwon with a grimace. Suwon didn't seem to notice his disappointment, and opened her hand to Gu Jingyun. Hurry up. Gu Jingyun blushed and said coyly, I'll get down by myself. He slipped to the other side and climbed out of the car. Suwon laughed, he's not that big, but he has a lot of thoughts. Gu Jingyun turned red and ran into the house. Gu Beizu quickly chased after Gu Jingyun. Miss, my uncle has just returned to the capital and may be busy with other things. Xiao Tao picked up the baggage and said a few words to Gu Huizi. I don't know what came to mind, I bit my lip and couldn't help but rub Suwon's bad luck. My uncle will become an official in the future, and today's situation is just the beginning. Many successful and famous men will have two beautiful concubines. If I am asked to serve the same husband with other women, it would be better for me to live alone. Suwon glanced at the entrance of the alley, frowned, and walked to the main courtyard. She had thought about this question before, but she didn't know if Gu Huizi would be willing to stay with her alone for the rest of her life. If Gu Huizi couldn't guarantee it, Suwon could make an agreement with him. In the future, he had another woman, and he confessed to her in time so that the two of them could get together easily. After all, no one can predict what will happen next. The important thing is to live the present moment. Xiao Tao didn't dare to say anything and silently followed Suwon back to the backyard. Suwon pointed to several rooms in the south and said to the middle one, this is vacant. There is some furniture in it. You can live here. Okay, I'll go settle down first. Xiao Tao went to her side room. Suwon went to the main room, opened the door, and the light from behind filled the room. Gu Huizi was sitting upright in a Huanghuali wood chair. Suwon raised her eyebrows. Gu Huizi stood up, poured a glass of water for Suwon, and said warmly, I'll take a shortcut and come in through the back door. Afraid I won't let you in. Gu Huizi put the teacup on the table, took a few steps towards Suwon, and said in a warm and low voice, Wan Wan, even if you are going to be convicted, you should be given a chance to appeal. You are not guilty, it's just that she couldn't control her emotions and was being pretentious. She said, I didn't let you in. Gu Huizi saw that her face was calm and did not look angry, so he did not breathe a sigh of relief. You sleep next door tonight, and let Xiao Tao clean it up for you later. Suwon took a sip from the cup of tea, walked leisurely to the desk, sat down, and wrote a letter to Cao Wanking. If she threatens Cao Sugzio today, no matter whether she tells Cao Wanking or not, Cao Sugzio will assume that she has told her. In this case, she has nothing to hide. Simply find something for Cao Sugzio to do, so that she won't have nothing to do and focus on poaching the corner. Okay, Gu Huizi agreed calmly. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 168. Su Wan's words turned out to be a test, hoping to judge his attitude towards her from his reaction. She felt unhappy that he agreed so readily. But the words had already been spoken, and Su Wan was holding back a sigh of relief. When they had dinner together, the two of them behaved in the same way. After dinner, Su Wan went back to her room. Xiao Tao came in with a greeting card. "Miss, this is from the eldest princess's mansion." A red greeting card sprinkled with gold powder, with Xie Wei's name written on it. Su Wan raised an eyebrow. "Xie Wei. Do you want to meet?" Xiao Tao asked carefully. Su Wan and Xie Wei didn't know each other, so she called the eldest princess aunt because she was engaged to the prince. Now that she has nothing to do with the royal family, Xie Wei naturally has nothing else to ask her about. Suddenly, Su Wan remembered the end of the game. Does Xie Wei know it's her? Su Wan frowned and raised her hand to press her painful temples. "See you there. Do you want to go to bed early?" Xiao Tao stood behind Su Wan and massaged her forehead. Su Wan closed her eyes and enjoyed it, and whispered, "Don't sleep now, I will read the medical books later." Speaking of this matter, Su Wan ordered, "I will give you 2 lists later, and you can go out and buy them tomorrow." She wants to develop in the capital and plans to open a pharmacy in this mansion so that she can research new medicines in the pharmacy when she is free at home. Okay. Are you okay with your hands? My hands are strong enough. Have you ever learned massage? Xiao Tao's technique was good. Su Wan felt relaxed all over, her aching head was relieved, and she fell into a comfortable drowsiness. I learned from a doctor before. The old lady has old cold legs. She suffers a lot during the rainy and winter days. If you press her feet while soaking, she will feel better. Xiao Tao sighed in her heart. She told the eldest lady after that, "I can no longer serve in front of the old lady." Su Wan was thinking about getting some medicine bags for the old lady to soak her feet. Okay, the headache is gone. Su Wan took Xiao Tao's hand away and went to right behind the desk. Xiao Tao stood aside and studied ink. Su Wan wrote down the things that needed to be purchased, wrote a prescription, let the ink dry, and gave it to Xiao Tao. "Tomorrow, you can mix this prescription with 5 medicines and send it to grandma, fry it and soak her feet." Xiao Tao accepted it happily. "The old lady will definitely be happy if you think about it so much." Su Wan waved her hand and signaled Xiao Tao to step back. She took out a medical book and flipped through it to see the insights on difficult and complicated diseases. At this glance, it was late at night. Su Wan yawned, closed the medical book, carried her clothes sleepily to the clean room to take a shower, then fell on the bed and rolled up the quilt to fall asleep. Su Wan was not used to having one less person around her. She was extremely sleepy but couldn't fall asleep. Different from the last provincial examination, this time I had something on my mind. Random thoughts. Is Gu Huizi tired of her? Too disturbing. Su Wan hugged the pillow and closed her eyes to prepare for sleep. There were steady footsteps at the door. She opened her eyes and paid attention to the movement outside. After a while, the door was gently pushed open and closed again. The sound of footsteps came from far to near. Su Wan recognized Gu Huizi from the footsteps. Her tense back relaxed and she immediately closed her eyes. The footsteps stopped beside the bed, and Su Wan controlled her breathing and calmed down. The mattress collapsed slightly, and the man lay down next to her, lifted the quilt and covered her. "Su Wan." The man moved, turned to face her, and spoke in a low voice in her ear. "It was just after midnight, it's already a new day, can I go back to sleep?" "You just said you slept next door yesterday." Gu Huizi suddenly stretched out his hand, hugged her into his arms, and held her hand. The bedding next door was not exposed to the sun and was full of moisture. It was uncomfortable to sleep on. Madame Guhuezi lowered his head slightly and placed a gentle kiss on her smooth forehead. In the future, I should avoid women like her more, okay? When Suwon hugged her, her whole body froze, and her thoughts became confused. In her memory, she only remembered that night when he unconsciously hugged her while she was sleeping. This was the first time he hugged her while awake. That call, madam, and one kiss made Suwon soften. You're so annoying, just sleep if you want, don't make any noise. Suwon struggled. Guhuezi chuckled a few times and hugged her a little tighter. You sleep, I won't disturb you. Suwon's face was hot, she huddled in his arms, closed her eyes and went to sleep. Guhuezi breathed a sigh of relief, and she proposed to sleep in a separate room. He was nervous, afraid that she would draw a clear line with him. She was angry, and Guhuezi was worried that speaking would add fuel to the fire, so he obeyed her wishes. I don't know how long it took, but in the silent night, a murmur came. I'm not angry with you, I just couldn't help but express my anger. Guhuezi's eyebrows softened and he said Suwon's confused mind was thinking about it, and she wanted to ask him what it meant now. Do you treat her as a wife, or do you still have her in your heart? It feels too pretentious. I haven't thought clearly yet whether to ask or not to ask, so I fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, Guhuezi got up and dressed neatly. Xiaotao heard the noise and came in with hot water. Uncle, please cleanse your face. Xiaotao put the bath bean water on the wooden stand and looked at the bed. Suwon was still sleeping soundly and was about to wake her up. Guhuezi stopped him and said, let her sleep a little longer. Xiaotao said oh and went to the kitchen to bring breakfast. Suwon sniffed and was awakened by the smell of food. She lifted the quilt and sat up. Guhuezi came in from the outer room with warm eyes. Are you awake? He took the clothes and put them next to the pillow. The teacher was not in the house yesterday. I still need to visit today. If you have nothing to do this morning, do you want to go with us? Do you want to have dinner in Zhang Mansion? Mr. Xie will come to visit in the afternoon. If you leave Zhang Mansion in the afternoon, I won't go. Suwon shook off her clothes and dressed slowly. Master is going to the Imperial College in the afternoon and is only free in the morning. Guhuezi walked up to her and tied up his belt for her. Let's go together. Suwon was stunned for a moment, looked at her belt, pulled it awkwardly, and said indifferently, well, let's go. She rinsed her mouth, washed her face, and sat at the table to finish breakfast. The two of them went to the front hall together. Gu Beizu was wearing a beautiful little skirt, and Gu Jingyun was wearing a handsome little brocade robe. They were already waiting there. When they saw Gu Huizi and Suwon, they ran over happily and shouted loudly, brother, sister-in-law. Have you been waiting for a long time? Let's go out now. Suwon held the hands of the two little guys and got into the carriage to go to Zhang Mansion. She suddenly remembered something. Did you go to Mr. Jiang's birthday? He had something to do temporarily and left Zai Town early. You haven't seen him yet. Suwon tilted her head and asked doubtfully, will he let you in? Gu Huizi smiled like a spring breeze, as long as you are here, he will not shut me out. Suwon. So she is a tool. The carriage stopped. Suwon glared at Gu Huizi and said, just wait, I'll settle the score with you when I get back. She got off the carriage first. The door of Zhang Mansion opened, and the housekeeper seemed to have been waiting for a long time. He looked at Suwon, Gu Huizi, and the two little guys with a smile, and said respectfully, eldest master, the old lady only sees Mrs. Gu, the second young master, and the third young lady. The author has something to say. Ha 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 ha. I saw the babies asking where they went in chapter 166. The serial number of the previous chapter is repeated. There are two 163s. They have been modified. There are no other problems. See you tomorrow, good night, okay. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Bao. Chapter 169. Suwon was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. She looked at the depressed Gu Huizi with a smile and raised her eyebrows. I just want to ask if your face hurts? Gu Huizi shook his head helplessly. Follow Uncle Zhang in. Then he said to the housekeeper, Uncle Zhang, please tell the teacher that I have a picture of 9 old men here. Zhang Bo glanced at Gu Huizi meaningfully, and the smile on his face deepened. Young master, I will definitely bring you your words. Suwon's face was full of confusion, wondering what kind of riddle the two were playing. Follow me to the flower hall. Uncle Zhang led 3 people into the house. Suwon held one in each hand and walked to the flower hall without squinting. Gu Beizu was very nervous. Although the mansion she lived in now was very magnificent, she was slowly adapting to it, but when she came to a strange place, although it was not as gorgeous as the place where she lived, the tranquility and solemnity added a bit of majesty. She held Suwon's hand tightly, and looked at Gu Jingyun beside her with eyes as moist as a deer's. With a stern face, Gu Jingyun caught a glimpse of Gu Beizu's uneasy expression. He broke away from Suwon's hand, walked around to Gu Beizu, and held her hand. Don't be afraid, I'm going to see the master. Gu Beizu pursed his lips and smiled, then leaned into Gu Jingyun's ear and whispered, Second brother, I'm not afraid anymore. Gu Jingyun said maturely, just think of it as a way to practice your courage. Gu Beizu nodded obediently. Suwon smiled slightly when she saw the interaction between the brother and sister. Girl Su, I see you again. Old man Zhang came out of the flower hall with a kind smile. After eating the food you cooked, I have been thinking about this bite. You are too busy. I have eaten at Ziwixi Anglu several times. The taste is similar to what you made, but it's a little bit different. Old man Zhang is a gourmet, and his tongue is like a sperm. Whenever he puts it in his mouth, he can tell what ingredients are used without even looking at the ingredients. Mr. Zhang, if you want to eat, you can go to Gu's house at any time. Suwon said to the 2 little guys, greetings to the elders. Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun bowed politely, Master. Old man Jiang's eyes widened, when will the old man agree to accept you as his students? Gu Jingyun was a man of spirit, and when he saw old man Zhang mumbling, he did not avoid them and saluted, and smiled so much that he showed 2 pointed little tiger teeth. You just accepted the courtesy from my sister and me, and you are our husband. Gu Beizu did not expect that he would be such an approachable old man. He was no longer afraid and said loudly and clearly, my second brother and I followed the etiquette of a student meeting a master. Old man Zhang listened to the 2 guys singing and stroking his gray beard. Zhang Bo spoke at the right time and said, Old master, the eldest son just left a message. He said that he had obtained a new picture of the 9 elders. Old man Zhang had a long face and snorted, you 2 are just like Gu Huizi, shameless. The 9 old man picture was old man Jiang's favorite. He had been thinking about it for a long time, but it fell into Gu Huizi's hands. He deliberately made trouble and locked people out, and even shamelessly bribed him with pictures of Zhuo. Does Gu Huizi think that using the 9 Lao Tu can calm me down and let him in? Old man Zhang sneered, he looks down on me too much. Unless he sends the square inkstone in his hand to my desk again. Come up. What? Do you have any objections? Old man Zhang squinted at Suwon. Don't dare. Suwon waved her hand, I'm sorry, I'm disrespectful. You are the first person to be shameless. Gu Jingyun was also stunned. As a teacher, how can you blackmail someone? Old man Zhang curled his lips, how can this be called blackmail? This is called filial piety. Gu Jingyun was speechless. He glanced at Suwon with his small eyes and his eyebrows twisted into caterpillars. Sister-in-law, he really won't mislead others. Suwon sneered, your elder brother, he taught you. Gu Jingyun looked up at the sky and sighed. Finish the ball. His new master was not tireless in teaching, but tireless in destroying. Go and tell him quickly. Old man Zhang put his hands behind his back and walked into the flower hall. I am old, and now I have withdrawn from the court and ignored worldly affairs. How can I teach a little baby? A husband has ambitions and will grow stronger with time. Suwon smiled and said, of course you can teach me. Old man Zhang couldn't help but glance at Suwon. This sentence came from the book of the later Han Dynasty, the biography of Ma Yuan. A husband's ambition is to be strong when he is poor, and to be strong when he is old. You must have the ambition of a man. Old man Zhang sat in a chair and looked at Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizhu. He could tell at a glance that they were good prospects. When he first met Gu Huai, he tried every means to deceive and recruit him as a student. He was as excited as if he had found a treasure. How is the result? Collaborated with the regent who brought trouble to the imperial court. Old man Zhang was very exhausted both physically and mentally. He said angrily, I can recommend a great scholar to be their master. Suwon muttered, if you really don't want to accept a disciple, we won't force you. She has other candidates in mind. Xie is known as a child prodigy and has never set foot in the court, so he has enough time to teach Gu Jingyun. Besides, the eldest princess also has a certain influence on the government. Xie is Gu Jingyun's wife and can be considered an ally by then. Thinking of this, she stood up and said, I'm sorry for bothering you today. I heard from Huaiji that if you have something else to do, let's leave first. Gu Jingyun's frowned eyebrows relaxed and he quickly bowed and said, Grandpa, take your leave. Gu Beizhu followed Gu Jingyun and said, Grandpa, goodbye. Old man Zhang. He coughed a few times. Actually, it's not an urgent matter. I still have time to give you a meal. Suwon said with a smile, no need, I want to see Mr. Xie this afternoon and ask him to be the wife of my second brother and third sister. I have to go back as soon as possible to prepare. Old man Zhang was dumbfounded. Why don't you ask him for advice? How could Xie teach him as well as he did? You young people are too impatient. The worst thing is that you are prone to making mistakes. Why do you? Don't you want to ask for more? Just for a moment? Suwon smiled and said, you are already old and you are teasing your grandson at home. We won't cause any trouble to you. Old man Zhang blew his beard and stared, too angry to say a word. At this time, Uncle Zhang brought Gu Huizi in. Zhangbo put the scroll and a wooden box in his hand on the small table. Old Sir Gu Huizi saluted. When old man Zhang heard Gu Huizi's name, he snorted coldly, changed the subject and stopped looking at him. Gu Huizi lifted up the hem of his robe, slowly knelt on the ground, and said respectfully, today Tingyuan came to visit. He is asking the old gentleman to accept Jingyun as a close disciple. Old man Zhang almost blurted out, you have betrayed the school, and you still want me to teach your younger brothers and sisters? There is no door. But then she thought that Suwon had already found another candidate. As soon as she said this, Suwon was afraid that she would leave without saying a word. Old man Zhang glanced at Suwon. Suwon was looking at him with a smile. Old man Zhang felt aggrieved. He found a step by himself and said reluctantly, this is what you asked me for, so I reluctantly agreed. Gu Huizi was surprised. He didn't expect the old gentleman to be so talkative. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 170. Before Gu Huizi came, he was already prepared to be embarrassed by Mr. Zhang. Apart from rejecting him at first, she actually easily agreed to his request. Gu Huizi didn't think that he was giving gifts to suit his needs, so he asked Mr. Zhang to let go. This 9 Lao Tu and Duan Inkstone are just to give Mr. Zhang a reason to let him into the Zhang mansion. He raised his eyes and looked at Suwon. Suwon blinked at him. She said that she could find another wife and not ask for Old Man Zhang, which was only half true. Old Man Zhang had an awkward temper. He had clearly forgiven Gu Huizi in his heart, but he still had some anger left. Gu Huizi wanted to ask him to teach Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu, but he was afraid that he would embarrass them. Suwon took the opportunity to ask Hui to teach Gu Jingyun. Old Man Zhang would definitely believe her words since he didn't know Gu Jingyun's true identity. Old Man Zhang cherishes talents, and Gu Jingyun performed extremely well at Zai Academy, so he must have heard about it. If Old Man Zhang sincerely wants to repair the teacher-student relationship with Gu Huizi, this is an opportunity for the two of them. With her words in front of him, how could Old Man Zhang make things difficult for Gu Huizi again? Gu Huizi waved to the two of them, "Come and become my disciple." Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Suwon handed tea to the two of them. Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu took the teacups and presented them to Old Man Zhang respectfully. Old Man Zhang took the tea and took a sip. Uncle Zhang gave the 4 treasures of the study that had been prepared to Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu. It's considered apprenticeship. Old Man Zhang was still carefully remembering Suwon's account. "Didn't you say that you wanted to ask Xie Wei to teach them? How could you let them accept me as their teacher without taking any action to stop them?" Suwon calmed down and said leisurely, "The 6 arts of a gentleman are etiquette, music, archery, charioteering, calligraphy, and arithmetic. You teach them to calligraphy and arithmetic, thank you for teaching etiquette and music, and then ask General Zhao to teach riding and archery. There is no conflict." Old Man Zhang choked with anger. He was actually tricked. "Come here, I have something to tell you." Old Man Zhang got up and went to the study. Gu Huizi followed him. Zhang Bo said, "Mrs. Gu, do you want to go for a walk in the backyard?" "No, you take me to the kitchen and I'll make Mr. Zhang lunch." Mr. Zhang mentioned her cooking skills as soon as they met. Obviously he wanted her to cook. "I'll take you there." Uncle Zhang settled down Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu and took Suwon to the kitchen. The cooks are preparing meals for lunch. Zhang Bo called over the kitchen steward. Mrs. Gu is the old man's distinguished guest. She went to the kitchen to make lunch for the old man. "You are here to help," then he said to Suwon, "if you need anything, just tell the steward." "Okay," Suwon said to the housekeeper, "do you have glutinous rice, duck, lotus root, and pork ribs in the kitchen?" "Yes, yes. The glutinous rice started soaking yesterday afternoon, and it has been 4 or 5 hours now." The steward quickly took Suwon into the kitchen, got the ingredients she asked for, and asked, "Do you need anything else?" "No, I'll get it myself later." Suwon determined the location of the seasonings and began to process the ingredients. She is going to make glutinous rice, duck, lotus root, and pork ribs soup, and stir-fried vegetables. Mr. Zhang has a weak spleen and stomach, so duck meat is easy to digest, nourishes the stomach and promotes fluid production. Glutinous rice also has the effects of appetizing, strengthening the spleen and warming the liver. Suwon washed the duck, keeping the skin intact, and removed the bones from the head to the legs for later use. Boil the eggs, remove the shells, dice them with mushrooms, pork, and bamboo shoots, add lotus seeds and stir-fry them in a hot oil pan to bring out the aroma instantly. Suwon added salt, stir-fried it evenly, put it in a bowl and let it cool, mixed it with glutinous rice and peanuts, put it into the belly of the duck, put it in a cage and steamed it over high heat. She cut the lotus roots, boiled the pork ribs and stewed them in soup. The cook stood aside, watching Suwon add water to the wok, put in the ribs, half a piece of ginger, and chives, bring it to a boil over high heat, remove all the foam, then simmer over low heat for about a quarter of an hour, and then add the lotus roots and ribs. Pour it into the casserole together with the soup and continue to cook the soup. "How long does it take to stew in a casserole?" the cook frowned. "Making soup in a casserole is not as fast as an iron pot. 2/4 of an hour. Suwon saw the cook's confusion and explained, "You cannot stew lotus root in an iron pot, as the color of the soup will turn black." The cook smiled sheepishly. The delicious aroma of lotus roots and pork ribs slowly filled the kitchen. The cook couldn't help but take a sip. The delicious aroma penetrated straight into the heart, making the greedy person drool. Suwon pinched it, opened the lid, and stirred it with a spoon. The aroma became stronger and stronger. She took a small bowl and filled half of it to the cook. "Try it." The cook swallowed, took the bowl, took a sip of the soup, which was exceptionally fresh, and took a bite of the lotus root, which was fragrant and soft. His eyes suddenly lit up and he said vaguely, "It's delicious. The old man will definitely like it." Suwon smiled, took out all the ingredients, leaving only the lotus root and pork ribs, put a little salt on it and took it out of the pot. On that end, the glutinous rice duck is also cooked. The moment Suwon opened the lid of the pot, the aroma of various ingredients that had been brewing for more than an hour burst out and swept through the entire kitchen. Old Man Zhang and Gu Huizi happened to come over and were instantly struck by the scent. Old Man Zhang left Gu Huizi behind, rushed into the kitchen, and came close to Suwon. His eyes were almost glued to the glutinous rice duck. "What did you do?" "Glutinous rice duck." Suwon brushed a layer of honey on it while it was still hot, heated the oil to 70% heat, and deep-fried the duck until it was dark brown. The oil in the pot sizzled, and the thick aroma became more and more overbearing. It was like a hook pulling out the greedy worms in Old Man Jiang's belly. He touched a pair of chopsticks and lifted them up, just to taste them as soon as they came out of the pot. "Taste." Suwon took out the drained oil, applied a layer of sesame oil and put it on the plate. Before she put it on the table, she inserted a pair of chopsticks and quickly retracted them. When she looked up, she saw Old Man Zhang with his mouth closed and scalding. His face deformed and gradually twisted. Suwon was convinced. "You eat alone, we won't compete with you." Suwon put it on the table, washed her hands and dried them. "We are going back first, and we will bring Jingyun and Beizu tomorrow." Old Man Zhang waved his hand, signaling Suwon to stop talking nonsense and leave quickly. Suwon and Gu Huai left together. He opened his mouth and breathed. Suwon looked out of the window and saw that he wanted to vomit but was reluctant to let go. He swallowed it in his stomach, drank it down with a glass of water, and couldn't help laughing. "Having an old man in my family is like having a treasure. The ancients will never deceive me." Gu Huizi took out the handkerchief and wiped the sweat on her forehead. "Are you tired?" "It's okay." Suwon didn't ask him what he talked about with Old Man Zhang. "Several people took a carriage back home. As soon as I got off the carriage, I saw a green cloth and black poncho carriage parked at the door. The door servant hurriedly stepped forward and said, 'The eldest young master, the eldest young madam, the eldest princess and Mr. Xie are here.' Suwon was startled. 'Here he comes.' She quickly entered the house. The eldest princess and Xie Wei were sitting in the front hall. Mother Gu was sitting on pins and needles, not knowing how to talk to the nobleman. As soon as Suwon arrived, she felt as if she had received an amnesty and hurriedly greeted him. "Wan Wan, you are back. The distinguished guest is here to see you." Xie Wei stood up gracefully, bowed to Suwon, and stated his intention straightforwardly. "Cousin, I came to see you today to play a game of chess with you. The author has something to say. Rub your little hands together, babies. See you tomorrow, okay?"